Parashah 40, Balak. In today's parashah, we find Balak, king of Moab, expressing grave concern for his personal welfare and that of his people, because he saw Israel, what Israel had done to the Amori. As we saw in the previous parashah, in Micah Chapter 21, verses 21 through 24, Moshe sent messengers to Sihon, the king of the Amori, with this message: "Let my people go through your land. We won't turn aside to the fields or the vineyards, and we won't drink any of the water from the wells. We will go along the king's highway until we have left your territory." But Sihon would not allow Israel to pass through his territory. Instead, Sihon mustered all his people and went out into the desert to fight Israel. Israel defeated him by force of arms and took control of his land from the Arnon to the Yabak rivers. Today, the Amori are most commonly known as the Amorites, who were the ancient Semitic-speaking race from the region of Syria and occupied large portions of the desert territory east of Moab. They were not related to Israel, unlike the people of Moab and Ammon, who were both descendants of Lot, the nephew of Avraham. Also, the third blood relative mentioned is the nation of Edom, who descended from Esav, the twin brother of Yaakov, Israel. After Israel had wandered for 38 years, all the adults had died in the wilderness. So the ones who we are considering are the second generation who camped on the eastern boundary between the territory of Moab and the Amori. As Micah Chapter 21 verses 12 and 13 say, they, Israel, travelled and camped at the Wadi of Zered. From there they travelled and camped on the other side of the Arnon. Now turning back to Balak, the king of Moab, having seen Israel overpower the Amori, became so fearful, he sent messengers to Bil'Am, the son of Beor, at Petor, to tell him, "Listen, a people has come out of Egypt, spread over all the land, and settled down next to me." So who is Bil'Am, the son of Beor? He was an itinerant prophet or seer, who was renowned for his divination practices and his ability to place curses upon people. So Balak considered he would be the right man to curse Israel. So where did he actually come from? The CJB, like many other English translations, refer to Bil'Am as having been summoned from Petor by the Euphrates River, which assumes that the place was located in the northern border of Syria. However, in 1967, an extra-biblical text was found in the Jordan Valley, which mentioned this cursing prophet, Bil'Am of Beor, which makes it likely that he lived nearer the Dead Sea and not in Mesopotamia, near the Euphrates. This raises the possibility that Petor was not the name of a town, but rather the description of Bil'am's occupation. The English word Pethor, as used in the Peshitta, translates the Aramaic word as meaning the interpreter. As the distance between the plains of Moab and Petor on the upper reaches of the Euphrates is around 600 miles. That's an incredible distance for anybody to walk, and which would mean that it would take the messengers the best part of 6 to 8 weeks to travel completely from one place to the other and back again. And remember, there were 2 sets of princes sent out. So it makes much more sense that Petor, referring to Bil'Am, is referring to his occupation as a diviner or seer, and he came from Midian, which is located near Mount Horeb, where Israel had been just 38 years earlier, and that is less than 100 miles from the plains of Moab. So returning again to Balak, we read that he sent out his princes to seek the support of Bil'am, who he hoped would curse Israel and bring about their demise. However, Bil'am, as a Midianite, was directly descended from the family of Avraham through his second wife Keturah. So he would have known El Elyon, the God of the universe, as El Shaddai, the God of Avraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, whom we now know, of course, as Yahweh. Bil'am was assured that he would be paid well for his efforts, so he would be sorely tempted to make a large sum of money by going with Balak. But would the payment from Balak be worth the risk of cursing Israel? We see his concerns expressed in verse 8, when he said to the princes of Balak, "Stay here the night, and I will bring back whatever answer Yahweh gives me." So the princes of Moab stayed with Bil'am. He received a clear message from Yahweh in verses 12 and 13. You are not to go with them. You are not to curse the people, because they are blessed. So Bil'am got up in the morning and said to the princes of Balak, "Return to your homeland, because Yahweh refuses to give me permission to go with you." That should have been the end of the story. But Balak tried a second time, with princes of even higher status than the first group. To them, Bil'am responded in the same way by saying in verse 18, "I cannot go beyond the word of Yahweh my God to do anything great or small." Now it's interesting that in that verse, Bil'am refers to Yahweh as my God, which suggests that he had acknowledged his ancestral origin through Avraham, and he had an awareness of the power of El Shaddai. However, his desire for wealth still got the better of him. As verse 19 suggests, God came to Bil'am during the night and said to him, "If the men have come to summon you, get up and go with them, but do only what I tell you." Bil'am appears to have received support directly from El Shaddai, or Yahweh. By allowing Bil'am to go, Yahweh was testing Bil'am, who doubtless thought that he was being given freedom that he needed to do the work of cursing Israel. While he knew about El Shaddai, he did not have a relationship with Yahweh the way Moshe did. Bil'am was heading for trouble as a result of his desire for wealth. Between chapter 22 verses 21 and 36, the narrative describes how Bil'am was confronted by the angel of God. While on the road, his donkey challenged Bil'am 3 times because he was going against the will of Yahweh. Then in chapter 24, Bil'am finally realizes that Yahweh is pleased with the fact that he had blessed Israel by speaking out to them 3 times as a blessing rather than a curse. 3 times Bil'am consulted with Yahweh and was told what he should say each time. Each time, rather than cursing Israel, he ended up blessing them, which greatly angered Balak. Hence, Bil'am received no payment for his efforts. On the 3rd attempt, Bil'am received the outpouring of the Spirit of God, and he began pronouncing the words of praise upon the people of Israel. In chapter 24, verses 3 through 9, he embarks on an extended prophecy about the future of Israel while singing their praises. Bil'am says that he was seeing Shaddai, what Shaddai sees, meaning that he was receiving the words directly from Yahweh. Finally, he realizes his eyes have been opened. 8 through 9, Bil'am continues his blessing of Israel by saying, "Blessed be all who bless you, and cursed are all who curse you." Yahweh said similar words to Avraham as he entered the land of promise in Bereshit chapter 12 verse 3. "I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse anyone who curses you. And by you all the families of the earth will be blessed. The blessing there was to be fulfilled through Abraham's descendants, through the family of Yitzhak and Yaakov. So turning to Numbers chapter 24, verses 10 through 11, we find that Balak raging against Bil'Am and telling him to go home empty-handed, saying, I summons you to curse my enemies, but here you have done nothing but bless them. 3 times already. Now you had better escape from this place. I had planned to reward you very well, but now Yahweh has deprived you of your payment. But before departing, Bil'Am gave one last profound prophecy, which was directed against Balak and Moab. He raised his eyes and made this 4th pronouncement. The Spirit of God came down upon him in a vision, and seeing Israel encamped there before him on the edges of the Arabian desert, he made the most profound and far-reaching prophecy in chapter 24, verses 14 through 16, where he said, Now that I am going back to my people, come, I will warn you what this people, Israel, will do to your people, Moab, in the acharit hayamim. So he made this pronouncement in verses 15 through 19. The pronouncement of Bil'Am through the Ruach HaKodesh is so profound that we need to take a few minutes to unpack exactly what he was saying. Starting in verse 17, I see him, but not now. I behold him, but not soon. A star will step forward from Yaakov. A scepter will arise from Israel and crush the corners of Moab and destroy all the descendants of Shet. It appears him whom Bil'Am is seeing is Yeshua at the time when he returns as Ben David, the conquering king. Yeshua will not only destroy Moab, but also the descendants of Shet. So the question must be asked, who is Shet? The only use of the name in Scripture applies to the 3rd son of Adam and Havah. So looking a little closer at the location where the statement was being made, we also see that it was in a valley north of the Dead Sea, in a town called Shittim, which was situated on the east bank of the Yarden River. However, their destruction is being held over until a time far into the future, even today. However, Bil'Am continued in verse 18 by saying, his enemies will be his possession. Edom and Esau. Israel will do valiantly. From Yaakov will come someone who will rule, and he will destroy what is left of the city. It appears from that verse that Edom will become the possession of Israel and what is left of the city, which appears may possibly have been the city of Shet. However, as Seir is also mentioned in this same verse, it possibly may be the city of Petra, which is located in the same range of mountains as Mount Seir, 40 kilometers south of Shet. Yehoshua in chapter 24 verse 4 also speaks about how Yahweh divided the territory. When he reflected back on the time when the twins Esav and Yaakov were born, he said, to Esav I gave Mount Seir as his possession, but to Yaakov and his children I sent them into Egypt. So it makes sense that Yahweh was speaking about how Yeshua would bring an end to both Edom and Seir. In that pronouncement, Bil'Am continues in verse 20 by mentioning also Amalek, being the first among the nations, but will finally be destroyed. Amalek was the grandson of Esav, who became known as Edom. So, as we read in Obadiah, Yahweh says, when that day comes, won't I destroy all the wise men of Edom, for the violence done to your kinsman Yaakov. Shame will cover you, and you will be cut off forever." And the words of Obadiah confirms the words of Bil'Am, where it says, "None of the house of Esav will remain, for Yahweh has spoken." Finally, Bil'Am concludes his prophetic pronouncements by speaking about the ships of Kittim, which come and subdue Ashur and Eva, or Eba. That has been another puzzling statement that has related to the acharit hayamim. So what does it mean? In Scripture, the territory referred to as Ashur and Eva is the region surrounding the Euphrates River, which now forms part of modern Syria and Iraq. However, those two Arab nations did not exist as we know them today until after the First World War, when the British and French governments together divided up the territories that had been part of the Arab League during the time of the Ottoman Empire. Now, having given their support to the Allied nations during the First World War, the remnants of that Arab League had their land divided up into 10 smaller portions, which are now currently trying to reunite as a modern version of the old Arab League. So was Bil'Am seeing in his prophetic vision the Middle East structure as it now exists. As part of the 10 Arab tribes that currently exist are also the 3 nations, Moab, Ammon, and Edom, which collectively now form the Kingdom of Jordan. In the near future, all this will be revealed. Now, returning to Bil'Am, he concludes his pronouncement with the words, "But they too will come to destruction." There he appears to be saying that the ships of Kittim are the ones that are going to be destroyed, which clearly suggests that the nations of the West are the ones that are destined for destruction. The details of that subject are for yet another day. So having completed his mission of cursing that turned into one of blessing, in chapter 24 verse 25 we are told Bil'Am got up, left and returned to his home, and Balak too went on his way. The consequences of this whole episode in the life of Israel stands as a constant reminder that the enemy is never far away. However, if we lift these events above the human level, we again see the real struggle is between Yeshua, being presented as Yahweh, in full-on battle with the adversary, who is trying yet again to prevent Israel from entering Eretz Israel as promised. As we saw just 3 weeks ago, the adversary managed to overwhelm and discourage the first generation of Israel, that doubting generation, to all die in the wilderness. Now we're seeing Satan is trying also to prevent that second generation from Israel entering the land by destroying them, firstly through the power of curses imposed by an outsider, and latterly, we see in chapter 25 next week, by using sexual promiscuity with the women of Moab. The adversary knew that if Israel became established in Eretz Israel, where they are now returned, he would have doubly difficult task in trying to prevent the final destruction of all the descendants of Yaakov's twin brother, Esav, now known, of course, as Edom. Even though this is what the prophet Obadiah shows will ultimately happen. But as all the descendants of Esav are to be destroyed, it seems logical that the destruction of Edom will not occur until the end of the restorative period of Yeshua, because only then will all the generations of Edom have been raised in the second resurrection and be ready for the final removal from this planet. So what Bil'Am was foretelling in his final discourse with Balak was putting the descendants of Esau into a future holding pattern that will finally ultimately end in their destruction. That fourth pronouncement by Bil'Am is very similar to the words of Yirmiyahu or Jeremiah in chapter 49 verses 13 and again in 17 to 18. I have sworn by myself, says Yahweh, that Bozrah will become a ruin, an object of astonishment, reproach and cursing. All the cities will be a ruin forever. Edom will become an object of horror. Everyone passing by it will whistle in astonishment at its disasters. It will be like the overthrow of Sodom and Gomorrah and the neighboring towns, says Yahweh. No one will settle there anymore. No human being will ever live there again. So we see that Bil'Am, who has set out to use his evil talents to assist the adversary in his attempts to destroy that second generation of Israel before entering Israel, instead became the mouthpiece of Yahweh against the king of Moab and against the evil pursuits of the adversary, both during his time and in the acharit hayamim, when Yeshua will finally fulfill the words of Yirmiyahu and destroy Edom forever. So Yahweh's promise also is to protect his messianic community. As we read in Peter chapter 2, or chapter 1 and 2, and Revelation chapter 2, Yeshua will guard against the arrows of the adversary and protect all those who remain trusting and faithful to his call. He also warns us, as his Talmudim, to be on the watch for agents of the adversary who lurk even amongst us at all times. Just as it was for that second generation of Israel there on the plains of Moab, so also can the adversary even today work his evil talents through the people who are prepared to hold on to the teachings of Bil'Am and the Nicolaitans, who were most likely the disciples of Nicolaus from Damascus, who was a court advisor of Herod the Great, who had a great influence on many of the Judean authorities during the time of Yeshua's earthly ministry. Therefore, the words of Bil'am's prophecy are also important in today's world. We must be like Bil'am and learn to say nothing good or bad about God's people Israel. In conclusion, as Revelation chapter 2 verse 17 said, those who have ears, let them hear what the Spirit is saying to the Messianic communities. To him winning the victory, I will give him a hidden manna. I will also give him a white stone, and on that stone will be written the name that nobody knows except the one who's receiving it. Shabbat Shalom.